So if you're looking for a spelling curriculum for your student with dyslexia or other learning challenges, today I want to share with you two of my favorite spelling curriculums and why they are perfect for children with dyslexia. All right, so the two that we're going to be talking about today are Sequential Spelling and All About Spelling. It seems like everyone is always talking about All About Spelling. It is a great choice. This is the one that my family is currently using. However, we have had really good experiences with Sequential Spelling as well. So I want to go category by category and talk about the differences between these two curriculums and which might be the best choice for your family. So first, let's talk about price. It's no secret that most of us are single income families and price does matter, especially when you have children that have to have specialty curriculums in just about every single subject. So for me personally, I actually bought both of these curriculums secondhand. So on eBay is generally where I get them. I've also gotten them at curriculum sales or Facebook Marketplace or things like that. But eBay is usually my go-to. I can get some pretty good deals on there. If you are buying these brand new, the one that is going to be cheaper is Sequential Spelling. It just has less parts. This is the teacher's book, and you can also get a student book, but it's essentially just kind of a notebook that you can write in every single day, or your student can just use a blank composition book or notebook that's, less than $1 at Walmart. All About Spelling is gonna have more components. We still have the black and white editions. They do have color editions now that come with different workbooks that make it like have more games and things like that. So that adds an additional cost. You're also going to need letter tiles to go with these. We have actually traded in our days of physical letter tiles and just use the app now, which makes it a lot easier and we don't have to have quite as much room. However, that is an upfront cost and you're also using cards. And so in general, then you also have to have a way to organize them. So all in all, it is going to be much more of a cost up front for All About Spelling. So if we're just going on price alone, Sequential Spelling is the clear winner for that. Now let's talk about setup and preparation and all of these things. Again, Sequential Spelling is going to be the easiest, more open and go. So essentially with Sequential Spelling, the way that you do it is you start with a list of words with a spelling rule. So for this one, we are starting with in, then we do pin, sin, and spin. And then we eventually get to the point where we are doing 20 words, and I think they may even go up to 25. Yeah, eventually they go up to 25 words. But you're essentially building on these words. So when I did it with my oldest several years ago, we would just take a whiteboard. I had a big whiteboard, and I would tell him a word and he would write it down, and then I would write the word on the board. So for instance, I would use a red color or a different color than the other letters. So in is the pattern word that we are using. So each word is in. So in is in red, and then the other letters are not in red. So essentially, if you are looking for setup, that is basically the only thing you have to do. You read your children the word, they write it down, you write the correct spelling on the board. If they got it wrong, they immediately erase it and fix it, and you move on. That's it. Takes about 15 minutes every single day. Whereas All About Spelling has much more components than that. If you are using the new workbook pages that have the activities, you'll have to cut those out and organize those. But essentially with All About Spelling, you will start with some review, then some new teaching, you'll do some phonograph cards, then you'll do the letter tiles yourself on a board, then you'll have your student do them, then they'll do some segmenting sometimes. This is like the very beginning, so it's a little bit different. But eventually you'll get into the fact where we're in a good routine with my son. He's in the third book, so essentially we do the new teaching. I show him the letters, he repeats it, then he builds some with the letters, then he eventually writes them, and then he has extra words that he does. So for us, it only takes about 15 or 20 minutes, but when you're getting started, it takes a lot more prep time and it's just a lot harder to get started with. So overall, as far as parent involvement and prep time and all of those things, sequential spelling is definitely the easier option. It is definitely more open and go and just kind of more to the point. As far as learning styles, I do have to say both of these curriculums were written for children with dyslexia or people that have dyslexia wrote them. I know for sequential spelling, it was written by someone with dyslexia, and I know that All About Spelling is written by someone who studies dyslexia. So both are with dyslexic students in mind. This is from an Orton-Gillingham approach, and this one also has some multisensory and Orton-Gillingham in here, but it's not quite as, I guess you could say, thorough, or it doesn't meet as many of the learning styles. You're not using lots of different tiles and things like that. You're essentially seeing it. It's probably a little bit more visual because they are seeing the different colors and they're writing it down. But as far as letter tiles and, you know, all of that kind of stuff, it definitely doesn't meet as many sensory, you know, differences as All About Spelling. Well, All About Spelling's very multisensory, and this one says it's multisensory, but I would say this one is definitely better for your visual learners. So as far as how does this work for dyslexic students, this is going to be good for your students that are able to really recognize and see patterns, whereas this is more of a systemic, like, you know, this is how children with dyslexia learn, versus this is something that can help children with dyslexia learn. I know, for instance, my oldest has mild dyslexia. Spelling is not a huge struggle for him. This worked really, really well for him. However, my son with severe dyslexia, he needs something that is more hand-holding, a much slower pace, and is more thorough in explaining why we spell things the way we spell them, versus this one is just like, hey, do you see all these patterns in these words? Isn't that cool? Like, it makes spelling so much easier. This is something that would have worked really well for me in school, whereas for my other son, this is something that he definitely needs. As far as student engagement, this is why we no longer use sequential spelling in our home. My oldest son found this kind of repetitive and boring. He just did not, he would rather just get it done and let's go, instead of mom having to sit and tell him a word, him write it down, me write it on the board, him erase it, him fix it. He would have much rather me just tell him all the words and then go back, and if any are wrong, then I fix them. So he was not a huge fan of this. However, he was also not a huge fan of this because it was a lot of, you know, you're not just spelling a word either. You're going in and, you know, having to do tiles, and then you're having to write it out, and then you're having to do a card. And so for my oldest, none of these were really good fits at all. For my younger son, I think that this is the better fit for him because he needs that repetition and that practice for words. Whereas this one, they do review them, but kind of once you learn the, you know, the chunk or whatever it might be, you're kind of moving on. And so I think he would actually do well with this, but he just really likes All About Spelling. And so I actually lent this out to a friend and forgot where it went. So we've just been moving right along with All About Spelling for my son. But as far as engagement goes between these two curriculums, I think All About Spelling is going to hold your students' attention much more. If you have a student that kind of just wants to get it done, then sequential spelling might be a better fit for them, especially, like I said, if they can recognize these patterns and they enjoy seeing, you know, those types of things, and they need more confidence in that area and things like that, then that might be a better choice. So if I had to say which we would choose or which you should choose, if you are looking for cost, simplicity, you know, low parent involvement, low prep, I would say definitely give sequential spelling a try. However, if you are looking for something that is more engagement based, multisensory, and just something that is written systemically for children with dyslexia, I think All About Spelling would be the better choice. All in all, if I had to pick one to teach, I would probably pick sequential spelling. I think we're in a really good rhythm now with All About Spelling, that it's kind of, you know, we kind of just go in and do it. We break up the lesson into several days, and so it's not as much, but sequential spelling is really just open and go and get it done. So I really like that about it. Okay guys, so that is my comparison for sequential spelling and all about spelling. Let me know down in the comment section below, have you used either one of these? If you have, which do you prefer? I'm sure you guys always have great questions and great comments, but let me know down in the comments, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.